Welcome to What the Decks, where over the course of a lunch hour, we take the idea for a deck build from Lunchbox to Deckbox. I'm your host, Skylar, and today we're going to do something a little different. So, this is the experimental week B slot. Usually, uh, we're in the past have done like deck doctors here and deconstructions, right? So deconstruction being where I bring a deck to you that I know really well, and we go over what makes it tick. Deck Doctor being one where I take a look at lists blindly, and we see if we can't identify what its game plan is, what its strengths are, where it might struggle, and what recommendations I might offer to that build. And this week what we're going to do, it's very similar to that deck doctor sort of a deal, but we're actually going to be comparing two versions of the same list. So today we're going to be tackling the Kunnin Krew with Rimelocked Relics, and we're going to take a look at a list built by Phil and a list built by myself. Now, I've run my list, I think, once, maybe twice. Actually, I think twice. Phil has not yet run his list. And this particular pairing is one that I thought looked rather fun. We kind of talked about it behind the scenes with that we thought that this could be a potentially interesting pairing. And funny enough, then, like that Thursday when I went out for local league, a local of mine named Jake had just picked up the Cunning Krew and had either just theory built or had actually built a Rimelocked Relics deck as well. So we sat down to a game together, and it was like, what do you want to play? And we both had like Rimelocked Relics to Cunning Krew on the mind. I think we might have both had it with us. And it was funny because we were the first individuals like in my local to have attempted this, and we came to the same Thursday night without having any conversations with each other before about this with those decks. And then we didn't even play those decks together. I think I played the Bloodthirsty Hosts, and he played Kanan with Hungry Parasite that day. So we were both like hyped about this build, and we didn't even test it against each other. And I think we went wrong there. We should have done a mirror match right there and then, because Jake also then took this pairing that he's probably had thrown together for a month at most, to our Madtown Throwdown this past weekend, and that was our Q2. And here's how that went down. So we had Jake in round one wins against Phil with Skinnerkin plus Breakneck Slaughter. That's 2-1, so it did go to 3. Differential of 11-7 across those games. Now we did have a glory differential cap on this event of 7. I think if you're going to do glory differential, it's the only way to do it. I think uncapped glory differential creates some uninteresting and runaway tiebreakers. And personally, I don't generally think that a high glory differential is an indicator of like a good game. If you earn glory above your opponent, like that is worth noting. But I think only to a degree. Like I think like if you were to this is already a tangent, right? But like if you go to an event and you score 21 glory over your opponent, maybe they score 0 that particular game. That's not particularly like a close competitive game. Like you dominated that particular game, and to receive 21 glory and then for that to stand in like that tiebreaker slot, and often like your first or second tiebreaker slot, then like it ends up boosting you the rest of the event, as you get paired into individuals that you're going to be more challenged against, right? Because as a tournament goes on, they try to pair wins against wins, if it's that sort of bracket, your traditional like competitive bracket. And so the further down into that bracket you get, I will say a glory differential of that of that amount would indeed be impressive. Like if it's the final table, but at the same time, again, that's probably that was probably a pretty harsh game on the other side of that equation, and especially if the next games go really tight. I, I suppose I digress. Pretty much, I think the best games in Underworlds are the ones that end so close. And I think that glory differential should be kept at 7, or at least should be capped, because I think runaway glory differential, especially when used then as a tiebreaker, is not an interesting metric or a good metric. I think games that end on ties, we have the same glory and then a tiebreaker decides it, are some of the most exhilarating in the game, or one of a difference of 1. And generally that means that game was really tight. That game was really interesting as well. So, okay. I just wanted to call out kind of how the second column is glory differential, and to just kind of call out how you never see a glory total higher than 14, and sometimes even higher, a glory total higher than 7. That 7 could be, in this case for one game, it could be 7 or greater. But Jake, with the Kunnin Krew, was able to take on Skinnerkin plus Breakneck Slaughter, and come out on top on round 1, and then move on to Hexbane Hunters plus Voidcurse Thralls, piloted by Bobby. These were really, really close, intense games. These all were. And took it and finds himself at the final table versus Grisel's Arena plus Voidcurse Thralls. And I had a blast watching these games. The final game does come down to tiebreakers, and Grisel's Arena win it because the Kunnin Krew are tabled at this point in time. And poor Jake beating himself up here. There is a strong chance that had he played a couple things differently in that final game, the tournament would have been his. And so I only highlight that not to poke at Jake, but to emphasize how close the Kunnin Krew were with Rimelocked Relics to winning this whole event, as piloted by Jake, and he was piloting them very well. And we had potentially considered grabbing his list and adding it today, so it would be a comparison of 3 lists, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get that list in time. So I will be really curious how the comparison of Phil and my lists, which have not been compared directly to Jake's, how they all differ. Phil had the only experience he had going into his list build here was that he actually played against Jake in this event in 3 games. So he might have had some takeaways just from how he saw it played. And I'm interested to see how those impact this build as well. Without further ado, today the idea that we're taking from Lunchbox to Deckbox is the Kunnin Krew plus Rimelocked Relics. And let's start taking a look at the differences across these 2 lists, as well as the cards that are the same. So I wonder if I could do a side-by-side. That would have been cool. I don't think I can manage it with the way I have this set up. Not easily. So we'll be tabbing back and forth, and I think that's okay. So what's up on screen right now is the Kunnin Krew as built by me, and then here we have as built by Phil. And right away you can see I have 9 gambits and 11 upgrades. He has 10 gambits and 10 upgrades. So that's interesting. We'll take a look at how that differs. And for those unfamiliar with the Kunnin Krew, why is this such an interesting pairing? Why was this something that I wanted to talk about today, and that we're all kind of intrigued by at this time? And so the reason for that, we're going to go here, we're going to look at fighter cards, is because of a few different synergies that are kind of built into this warband with Rimelocked Relics. So first and foremost, we have Shank and Gicket. I'm going to cover these 2 because they each count, when this fighter provides support, count him as 2 supporting fighters. So I had a panic moment there for a second. I was like, I did turn audio on, right? Yes, perfect. Okay, so they count as 2 supporting fighters. And what this means is if you get Leyfrost Conduit and you get one of these fellers on an objective, then they get to count as 2 support globally, and that's defense and offense. So right away, very interesting. It becomes a target on their back. Like as an opponent, if you're playing against Rimelocked Relics with something like this, like Briar Queen also has this trick available to them, where they can support every fighter on the board and count as 2 with Leyfrost Conduit. So when you start seeing Rimelocked Relics face down, you might not need to address them immediately, but you should start thinking about what am I going to do if Leyfrost Conduit like is revealed and then starts supporting the board here. Do I have a way to get to that fighter? And so the ability for this player to get these 2 onto objectives is really easy as well because of Manok. Manok, Cunning Command, reaction. Use this reaction after a friendly fighter's move action. Choose another friendly fighter adjacent to this fighter. That fighter makes a move action. So what this can look like is either Manok can be the one that moves next to, we'll say Shank or Gikit, but it could be any of his fighters. Moves adjacent to one of them. He can then say, hey, get moving, and react with Cunning Command and move them away off of his move. And that can be part of a charge. Often, this is used to then send that fighter in to help support the attack as part of a charge. But it can also be used to send one of these individuals back onto an objective, which works really well with Rimelocked Relic that's looking for us to be on objectives for surge purposes when Rimelocked Relics like thaw or fighters are killed, things like that. And another way that this could work is Mana could just be chilling adjacent to somebody. A different fighter altogether moves, and then Manok's like, what are you doing standing? Look at that one moving. You get moving too. And so there's a lot of movement tricks available to us with this Cunning Command. Spinnerite, thanks for joining chat. I've just spent the last 2 hours looking at DKK and RR build. Fantastic. So aptly timed then. Serendipitous even. And thanks Wellner for kicking off chat as well. I wanted to say hi because I saw you jump in earlier and I didn't yet do it. All right. So additionally, what other tricks do we have in the Warband? Those are kind of the main tricks. These Inspire boxes, by the way, and I always forget this, that there's 2 parts of this. The Inspired box says 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. I always forget that. By the time that's true, you hopefully have met the other half of this objective box, and it's or after an attack action in which this fighter supports or is supported. So anytime this fighter is a part of an attack that someone else is a part of, like they inspire. So for example, that Leyfrost Conduit fighter too, they can be hanging back from the beginning of the game, never help support, and as soon as they get Conduit online, then they're going to inspire right after that next attack action. Let's see. We have Kaylin in here as well. Hello. I played against this combo and it was pretty sweet. Excellent. So with the other 2 individuals here, we have Torka, Tough Skull, and Krookgrin. Torka is grapple. This is the main thing that he brings to the table from, like, each one of them has, like, their own ability text, and you don't always see that, so that's cool, too. If this fighter is within 2 hexes of the target, when another friendly fighter makes an attack action, this fighter is supporting, or is a supporting fighter. So being able to just support from within 2, that can be pretty strong. And Krookgrin, Moneybags. Choose 1 friendly minion and spend 1 glory point. When you do, the chosen fighter makes 1 attack action. That attack action has +1 defense until it has been resolved. Now, what's interesting even further with Krookgrin is this actually elevates when he inspires. So then it says choose up to 2 friendly minions and spend 1 glory point for each fighter you chose. So you could be spending 2 glory to get Shank and Gicket, assuming they're both alive, to make these out of sequence attack. Well, not out of sequence attack actions. I mean, on this side, it's being able to activate them even when they have a charge token before your warband's charged out, giving them +1 dice when they do so. Maybe they're already in position for an attack and you just want them to have that +1 dice and you got the glory to burn. So there's some different applications there. But then on this side, like if indeed they're both alive, and I never feel like they're both alive when I have this ability, as well as both alive and in position when I have this ability, but I could spend 2 glory to activate them both and get some insane mileage out of them. Additionally, you'll see that we all start on 1 block here, and the littler ones, Kunnin on down, go up to 2 dodge. So you really want to get them inspired for survivability purposes. There's also a smattering of Grievous, Ensnare, and Cleave across the table that you get to keep in mind when you're playing this pairing. Yeah, so that's going to be our breakdown for the fighters here. One other thing I guess I want to pay attention to in the context of Rimelocked Relics is we have a couple of range 2 attacks on Manok and Tough Skull. We've got some good survivability on these two, just with their health totals. And then we also have a range 3 net over here. So we can kind of keep that in mind as well. All right, so let's first take a look at the objectives. And what I want to do is I'm going to actually tab over to his build and see if I can't spot the differences. So I'm bringing 5 from Rimelocked Relics in the build that I put together, and Supreme Kunnin. And he did the same. However, I think I'm noticing differences here. For example, Total Conquest. Yeah, so he's going for a bigger payout. And we're going to tab back. Shattered Defenses, Icy Grip, Glacial Domain, and Frostbitten Strike. Shattered Defenses, Icy Grip, Glacial Domain, and Frosted Strike. So Defrosted is left out by Phil. I really like Defrosted. We'll talk about that a little bit. Outside of that, looks like we were pretty agreed on the surges, and we'll dive into these. What are the two that we had different? Why is it that these are similar across our builds, at least in theory? Like, where are we coming from? And then an end phase here. So we have 6. So we're looking. I wonder. All right, it's not gonna do this well, I don't think, but we're gonna see. Nope. Okay. At least it'll allow me very quickly to identify the differences. So let's see. What we are seeing as differences is I bring Steaming Corpses, Icebound Defenders, and I bring Stolen Warmth, and he brings Wintry Conquest and Cold Front. Okay. And I know Cold Front is also something that was brought by Jake. So, cool. All right, we're going to snap that back. My 2 different ones here, Steaming Corpses and Stolen Warmth, are instead Wintry Conquest and Cold Front. When Phil takes a look at it. And so Cold Front was something that Jake said was an extremely reliable score over the tournament, and was helped out by this like grenade card essentially that they have, where they will scatter and deal damage to anybody that in the ending hex and adjacent to the ending hex of this thrown bomb. So we'll take a look at that as well. He said that enables Cold Front and makes it quite trivial. So now that we've got them loaded in, I hit refresh data anyways. I meant to hit filter there. Let's filter down to Rimelocked Relics and Harrow Deep. Cool. So let's run down what our objectives that are the same. So Supreme Kunnin, score this immediately after a friendly fighter made an attack action with 2 or more supporting friendly fighters. So you can see right away why this one's easy, because not not only do you have these movement tricks to get fighters into position for supporting, and you have somebody that can support from a little bit of a distance, but this is satisfied the moment you have, and this is why they're pictured, Gicket or Shank in as part of the attack. So have one of these two support and attack, and it doesn't even need to be successful, which is the same as their Inspire condition, by the way. It doesn't need to be successful, just needs to be supported. So this is a really easy score. It's not dice dependent, really. The attack is almost a bonus. You're doing an attack, and this card's scoring regardless of the dice. So that's cool. And then Frostbite and Strike here. This is the same across both our builds. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action, and your warband holds one or more objectives. So it doesn't require any Rimelocked relics in play, just requires a held position and an enemy fighter is taken out of action. So you can see that if Maddox's the one charging, or starts adjacent to somebody, as long as he's able to use Kunnin command, doesn't really matter who's the attacker, he can send somebody onto that objective placement. So this can be your first activation if you have a 2 or a 3 health target. With a 3 health target, it's going to have to be Torka, and you're going to have to hit that Grievous. So there's a lot of wishing there. But this is also enabled by the range too. There's so many tricks to help kind of secure Frostbite and Strike and make sure that you're in the right positions for it. And then Glacial Domain, or Dominion. I think I keep calling this one Domain. Dominion. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if one or more friendly fighters holding an objective has one or more Rimelocked upgrades. And this doesn't care about face down or face up, which is why I imagine this is in both of our builds, and something like the Frosted is only in my build. So opponent's activation step is the part you got to keep attention to with this card. Is you're going to be getting into that spot with the Rimelocked relics, and then you're hoping over the course of their turn that you're able to maintain that spot. But it can be in any territory, so not hard at all. And then Icy Grip, we have score this immediately after an opponent's activation step, so pay attention to that again. If your warband holds 2 or more objectives, and one or more of those objectives are in no one's and or enemy territory. So when you have a card like this, you're going to make sure that it's in your brain when you are doing the placements at the beginning of the game. So specifically first, objectives. So this looks like a build to me that's going to care a lot more about having objectives than board placement. On the flip side, I know that this build works really well with longboard. I've seen it in action where longboard was often the preferred setup for the Kunnin Krew. So maybe instead you take the objective positions you can get and you prioritize that longboard. You're able to kind of then use your main 2 fighters as bouncers and protect the rest. So that's one way to play. But regardless, what you want to be thinking about with your first token placement is Icy Grip. If you can get one in no one's territory, that's best, because that also then combos with Icebound Defenders and creates a territory that only needs one objective being held to score off of. You'd still need to hold another one somewhere with Icebound Defenders the way that works, but being able to meet the requirement of all in an entire territory is held can be done with one in no one's territory and can make your Icy Grip spot quite easy. And then Shattered Defenses. And also during placements like fighter placements here, you want to make sure somebody can reach whatever token you're going to need to prioritize for Icy Grip. The only thing that can really help you out with this, and you can take a look at your hand and see if this is the case for you, but if you draw into Gelid Cyclone, you might be able to use that to teleport away. So you might not have to worry about Icy Grip as much if you've got a way to get a Seed Glory and Gelid Cyclone, and then maybe for placement purposes, you're putting one in the far back of their board. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Shattered Defenses. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action if that attack action was successful and the attacker is holding an objective in no one's or enemy territory. So again, another reason to be thinking about that objective placement. In this context, you're looking for a landing pad. So when I'm putting down objectives, I'm thinking about how I'm going to score Icy Grip and Shattered Defenses, as well as when I'm putting my fighters down. And at this point, I'll have a little bit of knowledge about my hand, but I won't have the knowledge of what I'll surge into. So I still have to consider it. And additionally, I think the only other one in my deck that I need to think about is Icebound Defenders, and we've described that as well. So what is different in our surges? It's the difference between Defrosted and Total Conquest, and I think this is a rather interesting difference. So I would rather take the safer one, and I really, really like Defrosted. Total Conquest might be in here to get this glory total higher, and it might be in here because Phil feels comfortable being across the line. But this card, I think, asks a lot, and I think of this deck in particular, because it's after opponent's step, so there's our first thing that we have to keep in mind. So whatever positions it's about to ask us to hold, we have to hold after theirs. One or more enemy fighters are out of action, so we have to have gotten a kill by the time we're ready to score this. And your warband holds 2 or more objectives in no one's and or enemy territory. So this card is pulling fighters out of our territory, possibly out of safety. Where if an attack gets through on our little guys, they're often going to die. Let's take a look at fighter cards here. So we've got 2 health, and yes, we go up to 2 dodge, but sometimes an attack still slips through, and pretty much any attack will take Shank and Get It Out. And then Krookgrin, he gets a little more mileage with his 3 health, but over the course of a game, there's usually 1 fighter that can threaten 3, and maybe more with upgrades. So these 3 are kind of difficult to advance with. They do get that dodge bonus right away, so and I do love 2 dodge dice defense, and the kind of the thrill of when this attack comes in, am I going to be able to survive it? Am I going to be able to maintain my position? That's a fun feeling. So there is survivability in that as well. You have a higher chance of rolling crits on multiple dice. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see, at least in my mind, defense dice really go past 2. And a lot of the time, not even go past 1 naturally, is if you manage that crit, like, you're canceling a full hit of successes, and so the more chances you have to crit defend, the more often you'll see it. All right, so Total Conquest. So we've got 3 kind of like criteria that we have to meet, and I think that it's rather difficult. So I don't think it's impossible, and I think it's totally fun to try here. But Defrosted would be my pick. So score this immediately after a friendly fighter's Rimelocked upgrade is turned face up, and that fighter is holding an objective. So what I like about this card is the way the timing of Rimelock works is you can, so like Gelid Cyclone, for example, so use this after this card is turned face up, remove this fighter from the battlefield, and then place this fighter in an empty hex that contains an objective token. Then you can give this fighter 1 charge token. This timing actually works for Defrosted. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's Rimelocked upgrade is turned face up. So when it's immediately turned face up, we're also looking for Gelid Cyclone's reaction to process. So we get to benefit from being able to kind of sequence this. And so it immediately flips up. Well, you can then immediately resolve this reaction and still be within that window of immediacy and grab yourself Defrosted automatically. So Gelid Cyclone just kind of scores Defrosted. And it's the only one that does this, but I like that that's available to you. I also just like that. I think you can plan for this pretty easily. This is not your opponent's turn, which is the other part of this that I really like. So I can plan, okay, so I'm going to put this Rimelocked upgrade onto a fighter, and then I'm going to activate. All right, that's one. And then they're going to activate. That's two. Then I'm going to activate again, and I've already got a plan for where this fighter is going to end. They're going to end on an objective. And maybe in this deck, that's Manok making that magic happen for you. But then at the end of that second activation by me, but that third activation of Thine, I'm able to capitalize on scoring this immediately. So it does require a Seed Glory, which Total Conquest doesn't. But it, so the difference here is Seed Glory or kill, right? So I'd rather find a way to get a Seed Glory with the easy scoring I have than having to first get a kill before this will work for me. So that's the difference in fill in my Surge deck here. And then let's take a look at the similarities that we have in our end phase. So in end phase, we both took Kunnin Warfare. I think, yeah, we both took the same 3 from Kunnin Krew. So that's cool. So Kunnin Warfare here. Duel. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters are each on a feature token or in a cover hex. I love the flexibility of this being a feature token. So even if we didn't have cover on the tokens that we can drop in right now, this would help them qualify. This helps objectives qualify. And then board cover as well. So if you bring a board with cover, you kind of open up your ability to score kind of warfare, giving yourself more spots to meet that. So 2 or more friendly fighters are each in those positions on a feature token or in a cover hex, and each of those fighters has 1 or more charge tokens for 2 glory. I like this card quite a bit. So your range 2 helps you get to those landing spots and attack from them. And then as the game goes on and you lose fighters, as long as you still have 2 fighters alive, even if you charge out, you can then take your charged out fighters and move them into these positions. So kind of warfare got better as a result of the charge out rule. And I totally agree with its inclusion here. Outmaneuver. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters each have the same enemy fighter within the range of 1 or more of their attack actions. So outmaneuver is hard to talk about without kind of talking. So we've got 2 range 2s, a few range 1s, and actually, I mean, I can just look straight at these fighter cards. 2 range 1s, 2 range 2s, and 1 range 3. So you're looking for like Shank and Manic or Torka to really help you with this. The range 1 might happen. Like if somebody's charged out and you just go hug them, then you're definitely within range. But this is elevated by the inclusion of more Krew. For me, let's see if Phil included more Krew. It's one of the reasons why more Krew is in here. I think the card's great already. Range 4, 3 damage, or sorry, 3 swords, 1 damage, and Grievous. So you're getting 3 dice to try for that crit and potentially do 2 damage at range 4. I think that's pretty crazy. And so is Frostgale. Frostgale is also in here to help make outmaneuver super easy to score. So this is Rimelocked. So I was going to bring this anyways. But it's cool that it then has this additional synergy where we have range 4, 3 hammers, 1 damage, and ensnare on this one. So let's see. We have no more Krew here, but we do have Frostgale, and I think Frostgale really helps open this up. Okay, so then Showy Tactics. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters are inspired. All right, so that, I mean, it's super reliable, right? As long as you have 2 fighters alive, it's not even saying like all surviving fighters, minimum of 2. It's just saying 2 or more are inspired. And after your first time, like, you're always going to inspire in pairs. So unless they killed one of them, then you've met it the first time you've inspired, right? Because they're only inspiring if they were supported or offered support themselves. So they're inspiring in pairs, and then they're going to get you a glory in end phase if they continue to survive the round. But it's more reliable than even that, right? Because it's pretty easy to then get additional fighters inspired. But I've noticed, okay, so in the two, two. I think it's been two, maybe three, but no more than three and no less than two test games with him so far. I've learned that there is a extremely high ceiling on like this warband, and especially Cunning command. I have thought I was clever and done like weird board setups at the beginning, thinking like, man, I will start next to two. Like there's a new triangle board. Let's take a look at that board. There's a board in Winter Maw right here, the Glacial Graveyard, that offers you three starting hexes next to each other. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'll start Manok here amongst these three, and then I'll have two fighters that can launch from him without him having to move. I kind of learned that that's really a trap. Like it kind of restricts how far you can get over the line to help you with things like Icy Grip and whatnot. So that was a bit more rough than I would have liked. It also, like, I think what's better is for two fighters to be like right here, and for Manok maybe to be here. And if you really want to launch both of them, then you have him come in 1, 2, 3, right? And then he can launch one and maybe the other. But I think having a set of two that you could double launch is better than kind of starting him out here. But I mean, also feel free to give it a try. It was just something I wanted to experiment with. You can also, if they position the board, so this up here, the top visually for us right now is no one's territory, and you put somebody here, then if they have a range 2 or range 3, you've actually started the game with somebody trapped. And I think in my game that was maybe a minion, and so they were just immediately killed. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I gave you an extra success in your attack there against one of my low healthers. What was I thinking? So there's always a lot to learn when you're dealing with like intricate abilities and different defense totals and stuff like that, right? Like shank and kick it. Like you don't want anybody chancing an attack against them until you've got them to 2 dodge if you can help it. But all right, so that was Showy Tactics. We're talking mostly about Inspired there. And Icebound Defenders. So we both took this, and then the differences come into play. Your warband holds 2 or more objectives, and your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories. This is an awesome card. Like this is just like so good for hold. If you can at least hold 2 in your territory, that might be all you need to hold. If there's 2 over the line or 3 over the line, I was going to say, and then 1 in no man's territory, like regardless, I'm muddying the over the line terminology there. I generally mean over the line to be just outside of your territory, but sometimes I mean it like I'll actually accidentally adopt it to also mean over no one's territory and into enemy territory. So what I usually try to mean by over the line is just beyond your own, so including no one's territory. So if there's 3 over the line, then you're just holding the 2 in your own, and that's it. That's all you need to hold. This card should probably be in every Rimelocked Relics deck. It's just extremely good, and it's one that as we play more games against Rimelocked Relics, your opponent's going to be thinking about at the beginning of the game as well. Both with their placements as well as what they're trying to kick you off of. All right, so the differences that we have here, Steaming Corpses and Stolen Warmth are 2 that I brought along for the ride. I'm going to get rid of our board stab here. And Phil instead brought Wintry Conquest and Cold Front. And Jake brought Cold Front as well. I think he has Steaming Corpses. Oh, you know what? He has Cold Front plus both of these. Ooh. I wonder, and he has Icebound Defenders, so he must have 4-wint probably outmaneuver for just like a higher glory total. All right, Jake, I see what you're about. So Cold Front, your warband holds more objectives than each other warband, and more enemy fighters than friendly fighters have wound counters. Now, the reason I personally didn't include this on my first draft, and I definitely want to try it out, but I'd lean more towards no, is there's an influx of hold proper warbands right now. Hold Swarm, Gits, Thorns, Sepulchral Guard to name kind of like the lead three. And so if I go to a tournament and they're there, like I think that those warbands are good, and I think that like there's a good chance that they could progress through the event, or maybe I get matched up with them on my first game. I'm probably not holding more than them. So the hold more is something that I just didn't think that I would be doing um, with these guys, and I could be wrong, because like the hold more game is always fun, even against hold proper. I love the hold more game, because if you can, knock them off of their third one, you're already on two, and then you're able to like push in or move into that position. Then like you've overtaken that, or maybe you're both at two and you're able to knock one of them off. Maybe you're the first one to get onto the ones that they can reach, that you mutually can reach, and then they have to peel you off of them, and they're having a hard time peeling you off of them. So there's still reason to bring Cold Front. I was hesitant just because I'm newer to this warband, and I thought that I might have a challenge holding more. And then the and statement here is what really kind of like finished dissuading me. More enemy fighters than friendly fighters have wound counters, and I just didn't feel that I had good ping coverage to help make this true, and that a lot of decks out there would have better ping coverage than me. So I kind of felt like, okay, maybe on the first bit here, and then that second bit I was really hesitant to jump on in my build. However, Jake was using, let's see, just bomb. Yeah, he was using Firebomb. Pick one hex within 3 hexes of a friendly Krookgrin. Then roll 1 attack dice. On a roll of, I thought there was scattering. There was scattering, okay. On a roll of crit, deal 1 damage to each fighter in or adjacent to that hex. I see. Otherwise, scatter 2 from that hex, deal 1 damage to each fighter in or adjacent to the end hex. So if you get a crit, it just goes off. Otherwise, scatter 2 from the hex, deal 1 damage to each fighter in or adjacent to the end hex. Man, I think this is still not a card I'd run, but I'm glad it was working for Jake. Jake says that this card is Blast, that this card is far more reliable than you might think, and it makes Cold Front trivial. So if you bring Cold Front, I think Firebomb is definitely at least something worth testing when you're bringing these guys. And so we're just going to kind of keep that in mind when we're looking at Phil's deck, that he's also looking for ways to get more wound counters on his opponents. But we're not going to dive too far into that now. I know, like, at first I can see, Firebomb isn't in here. So he's at least not subscribing to that gambit for that game plan. And then Wintry Conquest. So your warband holds 3 or more objectives, and 1 or more friendly fighters holding an objective each have 1 or more Rimelocked upgrades. So you hold 3, and then amongst those fighters, at least one of those holding has a Rimelocked upgrade. So for me, the 3 glory payout here is totally worth it, which is, I think, where Phil is coming from. However, with 5 fighters, I just felt that I probably have to see that round 1 or I'm not scoring it. And so I had a hard time including it because of the brick potential for myself. So I kind of went with more, what I thought to be more reliable scoring over the course of the game. Stolen Warmth being one that I don't love, and I think that Phil doesn't either. And this is probably the parody, right? Like, I took Stolen Warmth, he took Wintry Conquest, and they're totally 2 different game plan paths. So he'd rather hold 3 than see killing 2 fighters, which is what I've got here. So score this in an end phase if 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action, and 2 or more friendly fighters each have 1 or more face-up Rimelocked upgrades. So I'm bringing enough Rimelock upgrades in the deck. I'm not too worried about 2 fighters having them. That can happen though, like that can hit me on card order. But what I like to think about with Stolen Warmth here is 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action, 2 glory. That's Chill of the Grave, and we just saw Chill of the Grave get nerfed, right? Chill of the Grave requires 3 fighters dead now for 2 glory, and that's probably because it doesn't have an and statement. It doesn't have another condition it needs to meet. But I think that with what you're doing with this deck, the and condition here is like inconsequential, like or trivial would be the better word. And so that first part, as soon as you meet that chill of the grave, you can kind of just bank on Stolen Warmth helping you out. You just need to make sure that you still have 2 alive fighters. So you might have to play a little bit defensively if you're getting to the end of the game and you're running out of fighters. And then Steaming Corpses. So this is the other difference. 1 or more friendly fighters and 1 or more enemy fighters are each out of action. So we have to have seen one of their fighters dead, and one of our own. And then 1 or more of those fighters each have 1 or more face down Rimelocked upgrades. So this is, I would compare this slot to that Cold Front slot, and I don't know if there's a totally right choice. I think this is like play preference. So for me, I actually find Steaming Corpses to be relatively easy to score, and I hear different from a lot of individuals. So I think for some play styles, Steaming Corpses can be quite difficult and maybe be that card that just never scores for you. For me, I really like when I have Rimelocked face down cards. I like essentially like pushing that fighter to like make them an attractive target, or and like try to bait the death. I like, if I think they're going to kill a fighter, just slipping an upgrade on them real quick. That's probably the thing I like the most. And then they have to think about, like, am I going to kill that fighter? Am I not? Personally, I'd probably rather have that fighter still alive. But if you are going to kill them, please score me Steaming Corpses real quick. I run lethals on my boards to help make sure that at some point in time I can trade 1 glory for 2 if I need to kill one of my own fighters to make this happen. And preferably, I wouldn't want to do that until late game. It would depend on how I'm doing on like a fighter survivability or like board state. And then the other way that I like to score this is with Frozen Solid. And I don't think... Oh, hey, Phil's got Frozen Solid too. It's a good control piece. So I'm not surprised to see it here. It's always a bummer when Frozen Solid doesn't go off. It's got a 66% chance of going off for you, and it's a lot of fun when it does. So if you can, somebody that you think that you're going to be able to kill, or maybe like better yet, if you're going to get 2 activations to try this, to try to take down this target, toss it on somebody that you're trying to take down, going into your activation. So then you'll get your first activation against that target, and even if that misses, they'll get 1, and that'll see another Thaw counter on it. It's at 2. It'll come back to you. You'll get a third, or that third Thaw counter turn. Before it is applied, you'll get 1 more shot at taking them down. So you get 2 total shots to try and get them down. So I like that about Frozen Solid and Steaming Corpses. Hola, rarely, so this is chat. Hola, rarely get to catch more than a few minutes of the live, but I always watch it later. Just want to let you know the content is great and criminally underwatched. Aw, thanks, bunny.zip. Appreciate that. So with that's our objective suite. So we've kind of identified the differences in the builds here, and so far I totally see, I know Phil well enough to know where he's coming from on this build, and I don't think I probably talked him out of any of these choices. Maybe Total Conquest. Phil, if you're watching, I bet I talked you out of Total Conquest. But I have not talked myself out of any of these 12. That's for sure. So then the only thing I'm considering right now in objectives is maybe swapping out Maneuver out for opening up. See, I like more Krew. So I would have a hard time cutting it. And so we can take a look at that. Maybe I talked myself out of more Krew. And then I definitely talked myself out of Maneuver and try Cold Front and really just kind of like elevate how much glory I'm aiming for. But right now, like 16 glory, I think is totally fine. And I think that this is all extremely reliable, like pending a couple of kills. And so Stolen Warmth is where like you're hung up the most on kills. So we're looking at maybe 14 glory before bounties. And then as we start stacking bounties in, and we're going to need at least 2 to get Stolen Warmth, we're actually looking at 18 glory as kind of like a floor here. So I don't know. I think I'm fine with a couple reliable 1-pointers that I don't have to worry too much about, so that they don't really get in the way if I have to hold on to something like Steaming Corpses temporarily, or if I have to hold on to Stolen Warmth temporarily. It's like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to have like harder scores than this, and so I'll get these taken care of, and then I'll grab the easy scores as they finally come in. Sort of a philosophy for me. And on to gambits. So let's or the power deck in general. But I think the first thing that we're going to take a look at is why am I running 9 and 11 and Phil's running 10 and 10? And for me, that's because there are some amazing illusions in the Cunning Crew's deck. So they're going to be, I think, both of the Titans for sure, but I thought there might have been one more. Yeah, Intimidating Phosphor. Okay, so Titan of Cunning, Cruelty, and Intimidating Phosphor are illusions. And illusions don't really feel like upgrades to me. They feel more like gambits. So when I look at this, I don't think, oh, I've got 9 gambits and I've got 11 upgrades. I really think I've got 12 gambits and 8 upgrades. And that's actually why you see this flip from me. Because I'm almost never, I wanted to say never there, but there's that adage, never say never. So I almost said you'll never see me running more upgrades than gambits if they're all true upgrades, right? If they all take a glory to get out onto the field, because then I'm hurting my chances at getting cards that I can play for free in the moment, especially in that round 1. But that's not happening here with illusions. So for those not familiar with illusions, because this was first introduced in the Harrow Deep season, how they work, they all say this at the top. Do not spend any glory points when you play this card at the end of the action phase, or when this fighter is chosen by a gambit or is dealt damage, break this card. So end of action phase, you will lose this. So you'll lose this going into scoring. Or if the fighter is chosen by a gambit, that's yours or your opponent's. That's a pretty common way to see these broken, is sometimes your opponent could have access to some sort of choose fighter card in their deck. And especially back when these were introduced, they might then opt to not use that for a normal advantage that they would get from that card, but instead to just pull this advantage off of you, to take an illusion away from you. Or maybe they get both. That would be really great value for them. Or is dealt damage. So pings can hit this as well as attacks can hit this. But like this one in particular, +1 defense. So the chances of an attack coming in and taking this out are decreased inherently by what it's doing for you. And so when I'm looking at these illusions, my thought process is not, are these better than other upgrades? My thought process is, are these better than other gambits that would be vying for these slots? And I still want to keep my deck down to 20 cards, because this is a card game. And so if I can keep it down to that minimum, then I'm seeing each card have the same probability, but of that lower probability, right? So if you think about the top card as Schrodinger's card, and you've got 30 cards in your deck instead of 20, then every time you draw off the top, it's 1 out of however many are remaining. So that first card is 1 out of 30. That next card is 1 out of 29, right? That is much worse odds than if it's 1 out of 20, 1 out of 19. So it increases the reliability of your deck when you minimize how many cards are in it, and you stay to that tight 12 and 20, which is why you always see us doing that on the channel, unless we have like an extremely good reason to flex outside of that 12 and 20. And it's always interesting to explore those. Zandara, you are fascinating. So I'd be curious to see how many illusions Phil took. The other ones I took, since we're about to look at gambits, and I'm considering these as gambits in my head, we're starting with them. So Titan of Cruelty, reaction: after this fighter's action, other than an attack action with siding, push this fighter 1 hex. So it allows me to surf around, and this is after an action. So this could be an out of sequence action. It's not after an activation. So if I gave this to somebody that I then launched with Manak's reaction, maybe Manak is the one that's activating. He charges into this position adjacent to somebody, and my move value is not going to quite get me where I need it to. That's okay. If I played Titan of Cruelty in advance, when I get to that Cunning command reaction to move me, I'll finish my move, and then after that fighter's action, I can push this fighter 1 hex and get where I need to be. So Titan of Cruelty has a lot of play to it. I love this card. And this can help you with scoring defrosted. Yes, this can help you score defrosted. So immediately after a Rimelocked upgrade is turned face up, Rimelocked upgrades are turned face up. Let's see. In the reaction step following an activation step, place a thought counter on this card. When this card has 3 or more counters, remove each thought counter on this card and turn this card face up. So you're doing this in that reaction step. And so you can instead first get into that position with the reaction. And even if the order is backwards, it's all okay because this is all immediate. This is happening in a window of immediacy. So as long as it's true either before or after the reaction that you're making with Titan of Cruelty, you're able to score something like defrosted. You are able to consider that fighter is holding immediately after that moment. It's one of my favorite things in this game. It can be a little bit like fiddly. Fiddly is the right word. And so that fiddliness isn't always the most easy to grab onto, especially when you're learning the ropes. This is kind of like one of the last things that you want to be learning because it's a bit fiddly. Man, I wish I could pull up the last page of a rulebook here, but the rulebook PDF loads so slow. Do I have a rulebook next to me? No, I don't. I just wanted to show you, so you have the activation step, reaction, inspire, surge. So immediately after an activation includes reaction and inspire. So you're immediately after events will kind of be able to be finagled by I think I'm tripping over my tongue. Anyways, Titan of Cruelty, really cool. You can, if you're on that position, you can score and then react and move. If you're not on that position, you can react, move into that position, score. There you go. Okay. Intimidating Phosphor. -1 dice and there's got to be a more eloquent way to say what I was trying to say. So I am so sorry, but thank you for being along for that ride. Intimidating Phosphor. -1 dice from enemy fighters' attack actions to a minimum of 1 while they target this fighter. One of the things I like about this card is that it's not adjacent. So let's see. This reaction stuff to still score was something you taught me recently. Excellent. So Intimidating Phosphor is not an adjacent requirement, which makes me include it. If it was adjacent, then I wouldn't include it as an illusion because then you can just play around it, right? You can make sure to be attacking me from range 2, range 3. I'm never gaining the benefit from this, and you're able to maybe get that attack then through and make it really hard for me to justify bringing this card because it breaks after you attempt that. But if I can bring a card that says temporarily inconvenience you anytime you try to attack this fighter, unless you're able to choose them, deal damage through, or wait the action phase out, yes, that's valuable to me. Okay, so let's go take a look over here. We've got Intimidating Phosphor, so he puts value into this as well. Titan of Cunning, +1 defense, and he's shaken me on Titan of Cruelty, which I'm surprised by because there's a lot of hold in here, and so it's really good. even if you're not using this to score a surge, like to catch that surge window, which I was trying to describe before, you can still use this to knock somebody off of an objective and then push yourself onto it going into end phase. So I think this actually really helps with Wintry Conquest, because Wintry Conquest is such a demanding hold ask, or Cold Front, hold more, right? Knock them off, put yourself on. I'm quite surprised to not see Titan of Cruelty in his build here, but maybe he did not have room for it. Okay, so then let's see. Creeping Doubt, Easy Meats, Grot Pile, Kunnin, Skin of Their Teeth, Swamp Spill, hilarious. Okay, so we brought literally all the same 6 cards from the Cunning Crew's deck. And then he brought Cool Heads, which I ended up leaving on the table. And I totally understand its inclusion here. I like it. Frozen Solid, he has. Glacial Advance, he has. Winterbone Might is one of mine. And Fractured Steps is one of his. So he has Cool Heads instead of Titan of Cruelty. And I understand why. I disagree, but I understand why. And then he has Fractured Steps, where I have, what's it called again? Winterbone Might. And I understand this as well. So Winterbone Might, I like this card quite a bit. It was a card that I didn't have a good read on the first time I read Rimelocked Relics, and then the more I was playing it, the more I liked this card. So choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more face-down Rimelocked upgrades that has 1 or more thaw counters, and pick one of those cards. Remove 1 or more thaw counters from that card. +1 dice to the first attack action made in the next activation step by that fighter for each thaw counter removed in this way. So the reason I like this card so much is because I run Steaming Corpses. I also just think it's good. But Steaming Corpses is what puts it over and gets it included. So I'm kind of running 2 cards that I like already on their own, Winterborn Might and Frozen Solid, but I'm running them specifically to help me with Steaming Corpses. So Frozen Solid, I also get to do some control, whereas Winterborn Might, it can only ever be 2 thaw counters that you're removing, because if the upgrade ever has 3, then it's immediately getting flipped over. So at most it's 2. But what this card tells me is I'm going to get +1 dice or +2 dice, maybe, for an attack action in the next activation step, which, especially for the build I have here, is big, because I need to take some fighters down. So I can benefit by having the more accurate attacks. It can help me with Shattered Defenses as well, which is just getting that successful attack. So the plus dice is offering a couple of different things. But how this directly relates to Steaming Corpses is, if I think you're avoiding my target that I want you to kill, because they have a face down Rimelocked Relic, and I really need somebody like on the board dead with a face down Rimelocked Relic, I can pull 2 off and keep that pressure. So then you have to, like, either A, I've bought myself more time because your attacks have just been missing, or you just haven't got to deal enough damage yet to the fighter that I want you to take down. Then cool, I've given you more time to take them down. Or alternatively, I've added more time where you feel the pressure and you don't want to take my fighter down, and I get to continue hanging out with that fighter. So I really like Winterborn Might for those reasons. I think too, when people see Steaming Corpses in that game 1, the more you can add to the mental load of them trying to work around this, the better. So I think that's really fun. I like Steaming Corpses again a lot more than I think some folks out there do. So over here, Cool Heads over Titan of Cruelty. So Titan of Cruelty is allowing me to be aggressive and push on to objectives after actions are taken. Cool Heads is saying, we're already in the spots that we want to be. I don't want to take damage. I'm going to elevate the defense. Oh wait, no. Sorry. for some reason I was mixing up Cool Heads with the Fearsome Fortress card. Um, but friendly fighters holding objectives cannot be pushed. This effect persists until the end of the next power step. So it's not elevating your defense stat, but it is saying if you damage, if you're not able to kill me, right? Whether you damage me or time me, you're not pushing me off of this. So it helps hold down those positions for an activation step to make sure that you're not being driven off or pushed. This doesn't just say can't be driven back. So something like, I believe it's Brief Emergence in Rhymeworm's Bite isn't going to be able to push this fighter. So you're not going to have to worry about some sort of distraction effect pushing you off either. So Cool Heads makes a lot of sense for the hold 3 and the hold more that he's trying for. But I would still try to get Titan and Cruelty in here. I've been on the fence. So this is Chatty and this is Spinnerite. I've been on the fence about Steaming Corpses in this build, but I think you just sold me on trying it out. Woo! I'm glad. Yeah, definitely just at least test it out, see how it feels for you. I don't think that that card is for everyone's playstyle, but it's definitely for mine. All right, so then let's see. So Cool Heads, Fractured Steps. So I know Phil hates this card, so I think it's funny seeing it here. I think he feels like that he has to include it here because of what he's trying to do. And I think this is where I would fit Titan of Cruelty in, actually. So what's the difference? Winterborn Might here. Yeah, he has no need for Winterborn Might in his deck. But Fractured Steps, choose a friendly fighter that has one or more face down Rimelocked upgrades and pick one of those cards. Push that fighter 1 hex for each thaw counter on that card. So one of the things that makes this card not ideal is, first off, you've got to manage the timing really, really well. And that is going to be rather difficult. So you have to get a Rimelocked Relics face down underneath this fighter, and then you need to know, is it 1 or 2 activations from now that I plan to push this fighter, and is that spot going to still be available 1 to 2 activations from now? And that's tough. So I think best use is kind of actually what Titan of Cruelty is already doing, but Titan of Cruelty is going to last longer. Best use is you're going into an activation where you know you're going to try to push somebody off of an objective. Okay, so put a Rimelocked Relic on your fighter going into that activation, go push them off that objective with a drive back, and then you'll get your 1 thaw counter, and then in the power step you'll be able to push into that position. That's probably best case scenario. But if you ever need to push 1 and you have 2 thaw counters on, then you have to have a path open to be able to do so. So we're gonna take a look at a board again real quick, because the pushes are required. I went to Warbands. So let's say, I'm gonna try to blow this up a little bit. Okay, so let's say these are actually fighters, and they're so there's 2 fighters here, and I want to go out. Yeah, 2 fighters here. I want to go here. Okay, I don't know why here, but just bear with me. I want to go here. My fighter's here, and I have 2 thaw counters. I can't. But if all these are open and I still want to get to the same spot, then I can push 1 and then 2 and get to where I want. But the pushes are required. It's not up to 2 or up to the amount of thaw counters that Rimelocked Relic has. It's exactly. So that adds to the roughness of Fractured Steps. Is every once in a while it can be blocked. Let's do 125. So just keep that in mind. Like the timing on this card can be very difficult to manage, and then sometimes your push can get blocked out if you've waited for that second thaw counter. So I'd rather have Titan of Cruelty in the slot. Outside of that, let's run down what was the same. And yeah, we're making great time here. Creeping Doubt. Choose 1 enemy fighter. Push 1 friendly fighter 1 hex closer to the chosen fighter. So choose 1 enemy fighter if they had an illusion. this would be an example of where like we're also able to break that illusion just by playing this card. In fact, the moment they're chosen, like it would interrupt the rest of this to break itself before you got to push one friendly fighter. So something to keep in mind with how illusions work. Choose one enemy fighter, push one friendly fighter 1 hex closer to the chosen fighter. Then, if that friendly fighter is adjacent to the chosen fighter, stagger the chosen fighter. So, when pushing one closer, by the way, so you can't be adjacent already, and then like kind of maneuver into a better spot, like next to them maybe. You have to be a gap of 1 hex between you, and able to be able to play this card. So a minimum of a 1 hex gap, otherwise you can't play this card. And then push one friendly fighter 1 hex closer to the chosen fighter. And yeah, this is great. So this is like not necessarily as flexible, sure, flexible as sidestep being just a push of 1. But it's almost there, right? Like if you can just point at an enemy that's further away from you, then you can push one closer, regardless of if you can make the adjacency or not. But if you do make the adjacency, you can stagger them and maybe turn a guard token over to a stagger token, which is always great. But what you're using this for most of the time is like either pushing into like a supported position, or you're behind an objective and you can point at an enemy and say, "Hey, you," and then they can watch you waddle onto that objective and laugh in their face a little. That sounded a little meaner than I wanted it to. But you can give them like a knowing glance as you jump on that objective. Easy meat. +1 damage to the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made in the next activation step if the attacker has 1 or more supporting fighters. So yeah, this is awesome. So range 1 or range 2, it's only 1 activation, so you got to land the attack. But if you've got supporting fighters, so if you've got the ability to throw one of those grots in off of like a mana knock move, you've got 2 supporting fighters, so you're increasing the odds of hopefully getting this +1 damage down. Or if Lay Frost Conduit is already in play, then you're just getting this. So yeah, this is, if the attacker has 1, yeah, this is a great like +1 damage in this deck. Grot Pile, push 1 friendly minion up to, you'll notice a lot of these don't say choose, push 1. So like you're still selecting a friendly minion, but it's not saying choose first. And I think they were really mindful of that when they wrote these cards, because they wanted to make sure that you weren't accidentally breaking your own illusions. But push 1 friendly minion up to 3 X's. You only have 2 of these minions. It's Gicket and Shank. So up to 3. After this push, the fighter must be adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Then you can push another friendly minion up to 3 hexes. After this push, the fighter must be adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters adjacent to the first fighter. So you kind of have a target in mind, and then you look at where your minions are, and you can push 1 or both of them in up to 3 hexes to get there. It's really great. A ton of repositioning available here. The fact that it's a push means you're also not charging or moving, so you have no limitations on like your future actions with the grop. Or if you're charged already, that's fine too. You can bring them on in. Kunnin, I mean, it's just a really good card. Not too much to say beyond that. Kunnin, draw X power cards, where X is the number of friendly fighters with 1 or more charge tokens. Now, a synergy in this deck that I really like about this is Glacial Advance. Choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each chosen fighter 1 hex. After each push, that fighter must be holding an objective. Then give each chosen fighter 1 move token or 1 charge token. So if you have, and I really want this to happen, it hasn't happened to me yet, if you have Kunnin and Glacial Advance in hand, especially in your opening hand, you can plan for that. You can get a charge with 1 fighter, and then 2 other fighters can get pushed into position, get charge tokens. You have 3, and then you can drop Kunnin right then and there for a draw 3 and really elevate your hand, or hold on to it, wait for that 2nd or 3rd activation, get your 4th or 5th fighter going with charges as well. So I think that this is really cool in this deck, and Gelid Cyclone additionally works well here because after they land, you can give them a charge token. So yeah, I haven't got to use this card. It's actually been at the bottom of my deck in my test games each so far, but I'm excited about it. Skin of Their Teeth. Reaction: play this during an attack action that targets a friendly fighter after the attack roll. If that attack action would deal the precise amount of damage necessary to take the target out of action, -1 damage from the attack action to a minimum of 1 until that attack action has been resolved. So this card can totally save your fighter's bacon a lot of the time. Well, if you're up against the Kunnin Krew, you're constantly thinking to yourself, do they have Skin of Their Teeth in their hand right now? It's sometimes you just got to gamble that they don't. And maybe they don't have any cards in hand, and then that is your clear window, your clear signal. They do not. But as long as they have a card in their hand, it might be Skin of Their Teeth until you've seen it out. So if you're going against a fighter and you need them dead, try to bring an extra damage against them. They won't be able to use Skin of Their Teeth, so they'll end up holding on to it potentially because it's worth holding on to. But that moment that you need that attack to go through and deal exact damage to take them out, oh my gosh, when Skin of Their Teeth comes in and stops it, it's like, oh no, okay, so it's a great card, and it really pressures your opponent, because either they're having to bring extra damage because they're trying to play around it, or they really need that kill and then they're not able to get it because you indeed had it in hand at that time. Like, it's just very, like, it's something that they have to live with on the other side of the table and kind of account for, that you kind of almost have a flexible 1 extra health on somebody at any point in time, is kind of a way to look at it. And that makes it hard to plan, and that's really great. So you're making the mental load on the other side of the table harder, and you're increasing your chances of survivability. So great card. Swamp Spill. Choose 1 friendly fighter. You can re-roll 1 dice in that fighter's attack rolls, in that fighter's attack rolls for range 1 and range 2 attack actions. This effect persists until the end of the phase. I think it's wild that this card is end of the phase, and I understand exactly why this one says choose 1 friendly fighter. So this is the first of the cards of theirs that says choose 1 friendly fighter. So this can break illusions, and yeah, because if these illusions are already making somebody pretty strong, then they don't necessarily want you to also get attack rerolls for the rest of the round. You could always sequence it. You could play Swamp Spill first and then play Titan of Kunnin, and then you're there, but at least you had to think about it. You had to sequence it, so you can kind of self-destruct yourself on accident if you're not mindful of that order. Cool Heads, we've already talked about, because that's a difference. Fractured Steps is a difference. Frozen Solid, I've alluded very strongly to what this card does. So you're choosing a fighter, their side, your side, doesn't matter. Range, away from a fighter, nope, doesn't matter. It's unlimited range. So anywhere on the board, you're choosing a fighter that has at least 1 upgrade, and then on a roll of a channel or a crit, you get to turn that card face down, and it is now considered Rimelocked, and it has to go through the thawing process. So that's what Frozen Solid does for you, and it's helping me out in particular with Steaming Corpses. But Phil doesn't have Steaming Corpses here, so he's bringing it along for either A, the control aspects, or B, to get one of his upgrades working for him for the purposes of Frostbitten Strike. Oh wait, sorry, not Frostbitten Strike. Glacial Dominion, or Witcher Conquest doesn't care about facing, so that's good. Does he have anything else that cares about facing? He doesn't have Defrosted in here. Okay, yeah, so he just has it in here for control. I guess what he could also use it for is if he hasn't drawn a Rimelocked Relic upgrade yet, and he still wants to get Glacial Dominion or Winter Conquest scored, he can always try to turn one of his into a Rimelocked that would not have been otherwise. So that's another use for it. All right, so let's see. Glacial Advance. Oh yeah, this is the last one. Choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each chosen fighter 1 hex. After each push, that fighter must be holding an objective. Then give each chosen fighter 1 move token and 1 charge token. So this, you'll see this card in every Rimelocked Relic deck that gets made. It's just really good. Being able to push your choice of up to 2 fighters. So it could be just 1 if that's all you need it for. But being able to push fighters onto objectives, going into scoring especially, or to help with your surges, like it's extremely strong. And then the flexibility of a move or a charge token on those fighters is really cool. They could have been really rigid with it and said they're each going to get a move token or they're each going to get a charge token. But the flexibility really elevates this card and makes it into something you'll see in all Rimelocked Relics decks. Another choose as well, so you got to be careful with illusion timing. Same with Frozen Solid, by the way. I think that was another note I wanted to mention here, is in my game I was in a position where I needed a Rimelocked Relic on my side, and I wanted to actually Rimelock one of my illusions, and I was like, oh wait, nope, can't choose, which was a bummer. I thought that would have been really cool, but probably not as intended. So I don't think that they were like, oh, we're gonna put choose in here to make sure that illusions aren't affected, but it accomplished that, and I think that's totally fine. It would have been funny otherwise. All right, so let's see, what else do we have that is similar across our decks? So Dirty Fighter, Intimidating Phosphor, and Titan of Kunnin. Those are the latter two are the illusions we've already spoken about. Practical Joke is, so I run, oh my gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I run 6 in faction. He only runs 3. So Dirty Fighter, we'll talk about this one. Use this after a friendly fighter's failed attack action. If this fighter was supporting that fighter, deal 1 damage to the target of the attack action. So this card has earned its name, right? Like, this card is indeed a Dirty Fighter card. So you have this on a fighter that's supporting, not the one that's actually doing the attack, but one that is indeed supporting. And even if you fail that attack, you're getting damage down, right? So the attack is successful. Woo, I did damage. The attack is unsuccessful. Okay, well, I'll react with Dirty Fighter and I'll still deal 1 damage. And maybe that's all you need. That is rude. And then if you combine that with Leyfrost Conduit, it gets even more rude, because all of a sudden the person that has Leyfrost Conduit and Dirty Fighter is not only offering you, especially if it's one of the minions, to support globally on your attacks, they're also saying, hey, and you know what, if you miss an attack, that's fine, we'll still cover you for a damage. Like, whew, this is a strong argument for that long board, where there's a fighter that you want to combo and like kind of stack up and keep safe in the back and hard to reach, because if I'm up against this, I need a game plan to get to this fighter and take them down. This fighter is a problem. All right, so then Chillblade Armor, and so I actually want, like, this is another synergy to me, right? So like the illusion in here being +1 defense can get, you know, one of your guys up to 2 block, which you really want. And then the redundancy in here of Chillblade Armor to help you do the same thing is really, really good. So, you know, you might end up in a round where you have both and you're putting 1, you know, permanent option on one and 1 temporary option on the other. But like, the point here is draw redundancy. You want reliability. I want to be able to get one of these guys up to 2 defense as quick as possible. The fact that I have 2 cards in my deck that can help me do it, it is really good. So I kind of think of that as another synergy baked into this deck. So we both run Chillblade Armor because you absolutely do, even though it's not a Rimelocked Relic. And then my Rimelocks are Frostgale, Gelid Cyclone, Leyfrost Conduit, and Polar Connection. His Frostgale, Gelid, Leyfrost, Polar Connection. Yeah, so we have the exact same Rimelocked acquisitions, and I like them quite a bit. So then it looks like we differ in our final choices here. The skin boots makes a lot of sense again for his game plan. And ooh, Snowblind Cloak. This helps with Total Conquest. So we'll take a look at both of those. On my side, what differences? Oh, right. I brought some more in here. I brought Practical Joke. And I guess the other difference is more Krew. Okay. So let's run down the relics and why they rock in this pairing. So Frostgale, particularly going to help you out with outmaneuver, as well as just it's a great upgrade for holding, right? You can hold wherever you need to, and still be able to get damage down. From there, it comes with Ensnare. That's really nice. It's rhyme locked. If it wasn't rhyme locked, it might not necessarily make it into builds, but because it is rhyme locked, and it's going to help you get attacks off from held positions, that's why it's in here. And so that can really help with shattered defenses as well, especially if you're able to pick on a dodge target. Gelid Cyclone, we've kind of gone over this one, but it also comes with that Titan of Cruelty reaction. Now for me, again, I'm doubling up. I'm getting the reliability of seeing that effect. It's an effect I really like. I've got 2 fighters on range 2, and you can do a lot when you're able to surf around and push a fighter. This one's after activation. The other one's after action. A lot of the time that's going to equate to be the same thing. There's a little more play with the action one. So I have both in here for redundancy. He might have said, you know what, I've got Gelid Cyclone. I'm good in that area. I've got Fractured Steps to help me. And like I can use that slot for something else. And then Layfrost Conduit, best upgrade in Rimelocked Relics. We've been talking about it since the beginning. The only thing I really haven't mentioned is -1 defense to a minimum of 1 from enemy fighters during this fighter's attack actions. So not only is Layfrost Conduit a fighter that's supporting everybody when they're holding an objective, but no matter where they are, if they're the one doing the attack, they're also they're not getting the support for themselves. So instead what they're doing is they're bringing -1 defense dice to you to a minimum 1. So that's really good. And Polar Connection. So a lot of this deck is planning to have supports already. So +1 dice and innate support to this fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions while this fighter is holding an objective. If this was just range 1, this card would not be in the deck. But because it's range 2 as well, you're able to get a lot of mileage with your 2 range 2 fighters. You're giving them extra dice. You're giving them an extra success. This is really good with this warband in particular. I think this is a warband where when they're rhyme locked, you'll always see Polar Connection in the deck because they can leverage it so well. And then here's where the differences are. So again, mine are more Krew and Practical Joke over here, and you can totally see where the objectives are pulling these choices. We can draw lines from these 2 objectives. So Rimeworm Skin Boots here, you cannot give this to a large fighter or a beast. This fighter cannot be pushed by enemy fighters. So he can't give this to Manok, but that's fine. He's giving this to anybody else, and he's saying that you're not pushing him with drivebacks or with anything that's going to be pushing you through some sort of effect. Whether that's an action on the Howling Hood or that's a distraction, it's not happening. And so he's kind of doubled down for that reliability. He's got Cool Heads helping him do that for an activation, and he's got Rimeward Skin Boots saying this fighter, you got to kill me, or I'm not coming off of this objective. So that makes a lot of sense in here with the hold more and the hold 3. And then Snowblind Cloak, you cannot give this to a large fighter. So the unfortunate bit here is it can't go on Manok, because I think Manok's a fine fighter to be forward with. So you're probably mostly giving this to Torka Tough Skull. -1 damage to attack actions that target this fighter while this fighter is holding an objective in no one's or enemy territory to a minimum of 1. And it could go on other fighters, but the reason I called Tough Skull out is because if you want to be maintaining that position, holding an objective like that, then Tough Skull is going to have really good reach with that range too. and he's going to have health to already survive attacks. So if you can increase the amount of attacks that are needed against him with this -1 dice or -1 damage, that's really good. And then this helps keep you surviving to help with total conquest as well. And Rimelocked Skin Boots also helps with things like total conquest, making sure that scoreless immediately after an opponent's activation step is something that you can guarantee. Cool Heads is helping there too, because those positions can be really tenuous. If you're up against Rimelocked Relics and you see 2 fighters in those scoring positions, you're starting your turn, you're probably going to want to try to remove one of them. Well, if he's got Cool Heads covering the activation, then you have to kill one of them. Same would go for that one target that's hanging out with the Skin Boots there. And lastly, on my side over here, the differences are more Krew. So just elevating my potential output from objective positions. And I like the fact that it's restricted to Manok, because I just like the ability to salvage this if Manok's already dead. But the big part here is helping me with outmaneuver, as well as just giving me that huge ranged threat range, and potentially 2 damage from it. If this attack is supported with that Layfrost Conduit Fighter, like I can just it's just insane coverage. So I like this card quite a bit. And like I'm trying to kill fighters, right? So again, we can kind of draw a line where over here these are defensive, these are helping you hold. Over here I'm trying to get to Stolen Warmth, so more Krew will help with that, and so will Practical Joke. Reaction: after this fighter's activation, in which this fighter made 1 or more attack actions, if a target of one of those attack actions is vulnerable, this fighter makes this attack action. It must target a vulnerable fighter. And so that will help me get extra damage down, right? If I am going up against a 4 health target and I can only get 3 damage down, or a 3 health target and I can only get 2 health damage down, if I put Practical Joke on and I position, I get that first attack through. I'm getting a chance at that at actually just taking them out holistically. So I like that with Practical Joke here. Yeah, especially if I end up at a point where I have to rely on my ankle biters. Like if the game plan has absolutely gone sideways and my ankle biters are what I have left to deal with, that chip damage is real rough. So if I can get that 1 damage out and we're closing in on the end of their health bar, I can potentially make that 2 damage, and finish the picture. So yeah, all right. Well, I will say that I like both builds, and I see plenty of play with both builds. So I think today what we'll do is we'll actually post both of these up to Battle Mallet. We'll post Phil's build, we'll post my build, and I'll have to ask Phil if he wants a name for his. I kind of almost hope he leans into, if he does go for a name, he leans more into kind of any of the aspects of holding more, with his name. Like, yeah. But on my side, let's see. So let's give this a name. This is fun. I didn't think that this deck was going to end up on What the Decks, and I didn't think it was going to end up with a name. So it was just our Kunnin Krew, right? Hadn't earned yet a name. So what do we call this deck? Ooh, like Kunnin's always fun to include in. I know it's part of their name, and sometimes that's a little easy. Like I know I always forget. I always forget that I called them the Bloodthirsty Hosts, but I think that name is fantastic. Like you can easily piece together who we're talking about through those 2 pieces, and it's such an interesting picture it paints too. That they can, it's a pun. They can be hosting individuals. They're bloodthirsty while they're hosting. So I like to think of them as hosting maybe other vampires and getting ready for the hunt, but like they're also the hosts of a parasite. So anyways, so a cool name here, a good name. Let's see. I haven't used Winterborn with anything yet, but I don't know if it's necessarily the picture here. Do they have anything that feels schemy? Frozen Solid feels schemy. Steaming Corpses feels schemy. Showy Tactics, but that's in-house. Let's see. Sometimes this can be the hardest part of the episode. I'm actually amazed at how often I'm able to arrive at something I can be happy with. And then I might not love it at first, but I find that like using the name after the fact and feeling that the build that we did together, over the session is tied to that name, like ends up feeling good and I end up falling for them. I end up adopting the names and really enjoying them, even if it wasn't love at first sight, we'll say. So Frozen Kunnin, I don't know. I mean, it definitely summons the picture, right? We know we're talking about the Kunnin crew. We know a frozen element is, I think, often going to summon Rimelocked in, and not just any deck from Death Gorge or Wintermaw. Frozen very much so feels like a call specifically to Rimelocked Relics. Sorry, my brain is trying to I got ADD and was like, what about because we've already used Chillblain with the Wild Hunt. Like that's an example of a card that I was like we had that glitch come up where it hung out on the screen, and I was like, all right, we got to use this as part of the name. And I was like, man, Chillblain Hunt, is that a good name? And again, adopted it, and like I really enjoy it. It summons together our session for myself. A Kunnin rhyme. Ooh. That's fun. I like that. How do I? It wouldn't be with a Y like that though. The Y like that is. It makes me think of Rhyme Worm. I guess both of them are rhyme, and then we got the WY in worm. No, I get where you're coming from. Okay. 35 practical joke. Titans? No. Mine's called Brain Freeze Krew. Oh my gosh. I like that. Let's see. How do we play with that a little bit more? Can we do brain let's do the Fink Frozen Krew. Oh no, because is Finkin Muscles is gonna maybe make you think of Decunning or Dagox Stab Lads. So I gotta lean away from Finkin. I gotta stick with Kunnin or Krew. So Brain Freeze Krew. I don't hate that. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Speaking of adopting things, Spinnerite, we're gonna adopt your name. I like it. That is, if you would allow me to do so. We're gonna go with the Brain Freeze Krew. I like it. So here we go. Frostbitten Krew? All right. Well, we've belabored the naming section long enough, and we have a good name, the Brain Freeze Krew. So, next week is going to be another week A. I'm going to be coming back with you for a field report. I would be more than happy. Spinnerite says, fantastic. We're going to be coming back at you next week with a field report for the Hex Blood Stalkers. That's a killer name. And we're going to be building Breakneck Exiled Dead. So that's what's on the docket. And there isn't much going forward from then. I did receive a passive a thorns build that we can review here on the channel. I'm going to double check with that individual because that request has been hanging out for a minute. That's Zach. Zach has had a build on the show. He was specifically the one that wanted to try Plague Pack and Hungering Parasite with me. So we went down that amazing journey together. So I wanted to potentially check out his next choice, which is Fearsome Fortress plus Thorns the Briar Queen. So I want to see if that's still something he'd like reviewed on the channel. So that could be up as our next experimental slot. And I do need to get back with those worm spat folks. So if you're one of those worm spat folks, feel free to message me first, hit my DM and say, whether or not you still want me to try to make them work with Force of Frost for you, because it's overdue. I'll definitely explore the build on the channel if that's what you'd still like, or we can take that another way. All right, so you can see this deck build and many more at the Battle Mallets Nemesis Library. You can best reach me in the comments below or on the Mortal Realms Discord. You can check out all the Mortal Realms network has to offer, including a link to our Discord at themortalrealms.com. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. I've been Skylar, and this has been What the Decks.